the biggest challenge is like getting any attention at all, right? Because we've been in a content quality arms race like throughout all of humanity's like existence, but specifically in the past like 10, 15 years, the bar to basic things that people will consume and enjoy consistently has gotten so much higher, both in production value and idea value. The thing that you can consistently do the longest is probably the thing that you're going to be the best at and eventually like most unique and most interesting at. And like gimmicks are fun, but if it doesn't like feel right for the format and it doesn't like get you excited, it's really hard to sustain that. Like you can get like 1 or 2 or maybe even 10 clips out of it, but after a while you're like, man, I'm just like playing the clown and I don't really like it.
Yo, grab your headphones, get ready to roll. ZEROPOD coming at you, taking control. We talking about nouns, NFTs, and Web3. Doing it big, bringing the knowledge for free.
Welcome back to another episode of your favorite CC0 video podcast about Ethereum, ZEROPOD. This is an episode that is part of our ZEROPOD Spotlight mini-series, which shines the light on thoughtful and interesting builders in the Ethereum ecosystem. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Cameron Armstrong. He's a military vet and a graduate from Harvard Business School who built and sold an e-commerce startup and then later pivoted to helping creators understand their audiences with Seemore.tv. He was also a very early user of Farcaster, early enough to secure the handle @Cameron, and that's where he and I met and became friends. He also hosts a really great podcast by and for creators called OK Banger, alongside our mutual friend Kristen, and I highly, highly recommend you give it a listen. I hope you enjoy this conversation about his journey and what it means to be an on-chain creator in the current meta. Let's go. Just two podcasters, podcasting each other.
There's nothing better.
It's podception or something.
Yeah.
As you know, you can never have too much content to cull from. So
for real, actually, I think crypto is too heavy on like the clever tweets and not heavy enough on the stuff that people actually watch.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And you guys are doing a good job of it with OK Banger. I've been enjoying
Appreciate
it.
that a lot, man.
Yeah. How did that come to be? We can come back around to it too, but curious.
So, Kristen and I have been friends for a minute on Farcaster, like at least a year plus at this point. And so we connected over content stuff in general. She's done a ton of different like reps with it. And while Farcaster is really my first go at it. And when her and Art with her previous show, that when Art decided to leave Farcaster, she knew that she wanted to continue to do that. And it was kind of like, okay, I know I want to expand the kind of content that I've been doing. I've been doing some streaming of myself before, but I was like, okay, I'm not going to be able to sustain by myself creation because I'm not going to do 10 hours of a stream in my house every, other day. And so it was just kind of like a serendipitous, we both want to do this thing. We both really care about the craft of content. We both honestly like being pretty meta about the craft of content. And so we're like, why don't we just like make a show about making a show?
I like that. And at no point did she try to convince you to wear any kind of costume or yet?
Yeah, absolutely. Like that was maybe our first big disagreement.
Creative differences.
Yeah, no, I don't think we talked about this on the show yet, but it was, the logic is sound, right? Like you need something to stop the scroll with clips and things like that. And I'm down for it. We just didn't find the right like permutation that felt like it made sense for us and the show.
Yeah, and if it's going to be cringe, it has to be like the right kind of cringe too, right?
Yeah, like the gecko therapy guy, like that hits.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of versions of it that don't.
I was just going to say it needs to be like a post-ironic cringe, if that makes sense. Like
yeah, or so the other variation that we've talked about a lot, and we're probably going to start saying on the show, is there's what's basically like an education channel on TikTok. I'm sure they're on the other platforms, but it's a teacher with like a Mandarin on the end of a stick. And so like seeing this like Mandarin, like this orange on the end of a stick in the scroll is like, oh, that's weird. And so you like pay attention to it, but it's like really effective at getting people to pay attention to the stuff they have on their whiteboard. And we're like, what's our Mandarin on a stick that like makes sense for us?
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of those, not only just to get you to stop scrolling, but also to get people to engage. So I've seen
Yes.
there's this one guy on TikTok that he always comes on with something weird in his hand. Like I can't think of an example, but he'll always be like holding a kiwi or something.
Right,
And then
right.
and in the caption he'll be like, "How do you eat your oranges?" or something. And it's like just obvious like engagement bait.
Yeah.
You got to play the game, I guess. That's one thing I'm not very good at, but I should get better at.
Yeah, it's hard because like Chris and I both genuinely believe the thing that you can consistently do the longest is probably the thing that you're going to be the best at and eventually like most unique and most interesting at. And like gimmicks are fun, but if it doesn't like feel right for the format and it doesn't like get you excited, it's really hard to sustain that. Like you can get like 1 or 2 or maybe even 10 clips out of it, but after a while you're like, man, I'm just like playing the clown and I don't really like it.
You can just hire a Gen Z intern for that. To be honest, that
Yeah,
generation that generation is so good at that kind of stuff. Like they grew up on it, right? So like our generation, we only half grew up terminally online, and then we had this like period pre online. But they've been on it
weird.
since like
We're mutants, right? Like we had glimpses of the world where that wasn't the case, and so
yeah.
like I don't think we can shake it from our brain.
Yeah, and it's also just like how many thousands of hours until you're an expert, and these kids
Right.
are like they're there already by the age of like 10. It's nuts.
Yeah, that's like the sleepover target or like the friend group on the playground like game. Well, I don't know what you did growing up. I did a ton of like Yu-Gi-Oh on the playground. I know they're like practicing for TikToks.
Yeah, for sure. We were Pogs. We were big on Pogs
Right.
where I grew up. I don't know if you guys ever did Pogs, but we had like the battle station and everything, and actually played Pogs
Right.
and Pokemon,
Yeah, that's
of
fun.
course, too. But
Yeah.
Okay, well let's talk to sort of rewind back. So I'd love to hear a little bit. I'm sure other people would love to hear a little bit about your story pre-Farcaster. If you can tell us a little bit of whatever you're comfortable sharing about your career up to Farcaster, and then we'll go into post Farcaster era.
Yeah, so I grew up. I was actually born in Germany, but I grew up in the U.S. My dad was working for Coca-Cola as an accountant, and so that was like why. And so we moved to Atlanta because you got to like live by the headquarters, frankly, for most of your time there. Grew up in the South. Went to the Virginia Military Institute for college, studied physics and applied math. But then I commissioned as an infantry officer in the U.S. Army, and so did a lot of book stuff, obviously did outdoor stuff too. And then did the Army for 4 years, deployed to Kuwait and Afghanistan back in 2016-17, where I commanded a mechanized infantry platoon. And then I taught leadership at the Army's Officer Candidate School. And so in 2018, or really 2017, because you got to ask a year in advance to get out, I knew that I wanted to leave. I requested to get out, started applying to jobs, and I realized that no one really wants to hire you to do math if you haven't done math for a while. And so like my post army plan was fully flawed. And so if I didn't want to go be, an analyst like one with all the like 21-year-olds or whatever, after doing basically like my army career, I had to find something else. After doing some digging, I realized a lot of veterans go get their MBA. That's like, I don't know, it's like an approved off-ramp from the military. And so I did that, was really fortunate. Harvard Business School worked out, so I went there. Honestly, kind of had 2 years of learning about a whole like planet that I didn't know existed, right? Like I grew up, suburban Georgia. That was kind of my worldview. Learned a lot about, the Goldman Sachs, McKinsey type people in the world. Learned that I didn't want anything to do with that. Vibed with some startup type people at business school because, like, there is a mix of people, and a lot of the people from tech, ex Uber, ex startup people were the people I like vibed with, and so. So graduated into COVID from my couch in 2020. And ended up coming on as like the third like sweat equity co-founder to an e-commerce software startup, basically working with media publishers and helping them like primarily syndicate their content places. Learned a lot about how like the plumbing of the internet and how like value flows through the internet. We did a lot of integrations like around the Amazon universe. That hit really hard during COVID. It was honestly like a really right place, right time kind of thing, because everyone was buying e-commerce. Ended up being like, hey, this isn't where I wanted to be long term. my co-founder sold the company in like late 2021. I left shortly thereafter and jumped into what I felt at the time was the closest to the mid 2000s chaos energy internet that I grew up with, which is obviously crypto. And so left that, found crypto, didn't know a soul, did what most people do, kind of like lurked on crypto Twitter for a while. Did that for maybe like 6 months where I was like decompressing, trying to get some sanity back from that first startup run. Found Farcaster in mid 2022, pretty early. Alex Kwan at Ace on Farcaster had tweeted out a sign up link to Farcaster that he was not supposed to.
I was going to say, I don't think you're supposed to do that.
Yeah. And so he'd been working on this like tiny rooms project, like pixel art, actually like not dissimilar from L Riot Ghoul's project, if you see that on your feed. And so I thought that was really cool. And as when Ace posted this, I was like, oh, I gotta explore this. And so I got in. I didn't cast anything for a few days because like they're gonna kick me out. Because like once I got in, I realized that it was like very small. So I'm FID like 617. So like of that, a fraction of those were active users at the time. So I was like, oh, I'm in this room in tech with people from like Coinbase or whatever I'm not supposed to be in. I'd hope they don't kick me out. And then I like really lurked for like a month or two, started casting, nobody kicked me out. And then like Farcaster stuff kind of snowballed from there.
Nice. Yeah. It's good to be early to these things.
Yeah, I mean, and it was like one of those things where the energy wasn't even that we're all early to this thing. We're just like a bunch of internet weirdos in a room just interacting. You know what I mean? And then like,
yeah,
with every 10x in terms of signups, it was like, oh, maybe we are early to something. Maybe there's like an energy here that other places on the internet don't have.
Well, so many things fail, right? That you can be early to lots of things and it won't really matter. So many such cases. I'm sure you and I have both been early to many protocols that never made it through the door.
A lot of POAPs lost to time that like show the trail of failures.
The trail of tears, the crypto trail of tears. Yeah. I think that's interesting. Can you talk a little bit about the difference in Farcaster then versus now, since you've sort of been there?
Yeah, so I think that like Farcaster is still a really good place for like crypto and we'll say kind of like niche tech founders, but it's like different good. So a year and a half ago, it was really, really good to have a group of people that were actively running experiments at that time, but they hadn't had enough success that they were like still able to talk and have kind of like, the equivalent of like a tech friend group chat or a founder like a group chat, just like in public on the feed.
Or they were superhuman like Jesse and were able to do both, while running.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like all these people were just like actively talking about what they were finding out or what they had like found out, during their Y Combinator stint or something like that. And then now that doesn't really happen on the feed as much. I suspect a lot of those conversations have moved to text chains and group chats that are probably geo specific, like New York or SF. And so like, but the energy, like, the trade-off is like now it's a better place to find your first 100 users. You know what I mean? And so like it's still like a very valuable place for like early stage founders, just in a different way. It's like more utilitarian. And the flip side is like all these people that, got a little bit of traction either like on Farcaster or in crypto, they've kind of moved on to bigger ponds just because like there's a ceiling on how far you can go with like high utilization users in your apps in the Farcaster ecosystem today, just because like it's early.
Yeah. I think that's true, but my gut instinct too is that the first 100 users you might find on Farcaster are a lot higher value than the first 100 you might find on X or wherever else.
100%. Yeah, like it's very much like once you feel good about that 100, that this as a marketing channel, like your bottleneck in your growth then becomes like Farcaster growth, and that's like a super uncomfortable thing as a founder to like have to
you don't control it.
In the team. Yeah, and so like. That's like, it's not a criticism of Farcaster because it the maturity of the platform is what it is. It's just kind of like hey, if you're trying to do this like venture scale thing, you today's Farcaster just can't support it.
Mm.
Like
So
a year, 2 years, I think it can, but today it can't.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, talking about building sort of integrated with Farcaster on Farcaster, can you tell us a little bit about Seemore TV and what that's all about?
Yeah, so Seemore is kind of in its like fourth iteration of Seemore, like seventh iteration of what I've been building in and around Farcaster. We relaunched Seemore as the best place on the internet for a creator to build their list. And so I've been doing creator stuff for like a year and a half plus now. I've been talking with creators as long, and I'm really like obsessed with the creator economy. I've been like a daily active user of YouTube for 20 years, I realized, which is crazy. Or like, 15 years, however long YouTube's been around, because I was a weird internet kid. And the like 0 to 1, or even like the 1 to 100 like era of a content creator, and like this because you've been putting content out, is it's really driven by a ton of one-on-one interactions with people that are engaging with your stuff when you're early. Like it's very hard to overnight like start a channel and then it immediately become like a national or global scale channel. It's like a lot of these relationship building pieces. Knowing that what the creator is really, really good at is the content, but the like bottleneck is honestly kind of sales in an authentic way. It's like interacting with the people that like your stuff so that you can understand what they like so you can do more of it. And also, spending what I consider to be like a creator's most valuable resources in the early stage, which is attention to your audience, because they like you for some reason. And so like they want to engage with you more. That's why live chat is such an important part of a lot of modern content. So we built what we call your list, which is a segment of VIP, like followers of your stuff, whether they're your followers or subscribers to your hyper sub or your channels, whatever. It's a selection of people that makes sense for you to interact with, because it's going to like help increase your reach. It's frankly going to give you good signal because they like have been around for a minute. They have like built up a reputation as people that like care and have good taste. And then also like a newly added section, because those are two segments of your audience that kind of need different things. And so we just launched this, going to have an expanded version of it out today and a free tier today as well. And like, frankly, we want to be the best place on the internet for a creator to just sign up, log in, and then know what to do every day to like maintain consistent growth rather than just play the content algorithm lottery, which is like what most people do.
So is it kind of like if Linktree and Google Analytics had a baby in a way? That's what I'm kind of.
Yeah. So like for people that have been following Seemore, we've built automated creator pages where when you connect your accounts, we pull in all of your best and most recent content, basically have like a backup of all of your content anywhere and display it in kind of like a mini TikTok style page app. And
wait, it's an actual backup? Like it's not just embedded content?
No, yeah, we don't store video content yet, but all of the text content, things like that, for sure.
Okay.
The vision is very much to have some cancel insurance in the future, but that's a sneak peek.
Yeah, that's cool,
right? Because if you get deplatformed, that stuff's gone in Web 2.
That's why we've been leaning pretty heavily into on-chain content. But even then, like you're on pods.media as well, and so are we. We just moved over to pods.media for ZeroPod, and it's great. I love what they're building, but even then, like video's not like natively supported on chain yet. I like what they're doing as a stopgap measure, and Zora does support video, but even then, like IPFS struggles so hard with anything that's over a gig. So yeah, we're a long way from having like truly on-chain available video for sure.
Yeah, and so like I think it's one of those things that like once we have like creators and the audience that like kind of understand and natively vibe with like how on-chain media is consumed and shared, I think it becomes more of an obvious thing to build. But like I understand not wanting to bet on like building decentralized video infrastructure, because that's like a huge infra bet, because that stuff gets expensive fast.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But I do like, speaking of pods, though, I do like what they're doing in terms of aggregating everything around the mid page. It kind of like, it makes the right the right trade-offs, I guess, in terms of like, okay, let's just embed the video from YouTube. Yes, you could get deplatformed from YouTube, but what are the odds you'll be deplatformed from YouTube and Spotify at the same time? So it kind of sort of hedges its bets in terms of making sure your content is all available in one place and also is mintable.
Yeah, and what I think that they're doing, and I think they know they're doing it. It just hasn't really been utilized that as much yet. Is when you meet creators where they are with their content flow, which is like making podcasts, like that's like a known behavior in the creator economy. But you make the NFT layer, the like collect layer, like adapted to that native, like frankly, not that like you don't have to do a bunch of extra stuff to make it work. It's like I think it's the closest to something that a new user who's never been exposed to that behavior can like pick up and understand and participate in without much headache. And like we're frankly, Kristen and I are so excited about it that one of the things we're launching for Seemore soon is kind of like you can think of it as like a badge page. And so every time a fan collects one of your episodes, it goes into a little bit like, you remember, I mean, you play Pokemon, you remember the gym badges? We're trying to create a way for fans to both display and keep track of like what episodes that they've collected the badges from. And you can't really do that in Web 2, like in a meaningful way.
I think that's promising because I think going back to the pods example too, I think they're smart in realizing that when it comes to podcasts anyway, minting is a patronage behavior more so than it is a speculation behavior. And that's one thing that frustrated a lot of us that used to mint our podcasts on Zora is that like all power to Zora, they're always like pushing the envelope and Jacob's always trying new things and it's amazing. But I don't think that art coins is the way forward for most content creators, because I don't want people to speculate on this, say this was going to be a podcast episode. I don't want people to speculate on the Toady Cameron episode. I want them to find it, and I want them to find it in 5 years and say, oh, that was cool, and mint it. And and a little bit of that goes to the creators. I think that is more true to what creators really want. And Pods has done a great job by basically refusing to update to the new Zora protocol and being like, we're going to stick with the old classic because it does what creators want it to do.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like how creators generally make money, there's 3-ish big buckets. There's well, creators don't really make money on this, but like content makes money on this, and that's like platform revenue. There is sponsorship from brands, and then there's some sort of direct payment from like a fan. Like outside of that, it's really hard to consistently make a dollar.
We unlocked a third one, but we'll talk to it later. We'll talk about it later. Yeah.
I definitely want to hear about it. The ability for people like what is an episode NFT like, but a rebranded tip with a really nice receipt that you want to show off. Like that's like the best case for these episode collection things for me. And I think like that mental model is really powerful because people already like supporting creators.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. And I meant to come back to that too on the badges and the leaderboards being like just a really, I guess a little bit ephemeral, but like an interesting social status way to patronize creators that you like,
Yeah, like every creator that is kind of like been around longitudinally, like there's a community that forms around that person. It's like a culture of like the channel and the people that like to consume that content. And the status games in like Discord roles is super real, right? Like and it's just, I think, a natural evolution to not be locked into one spot and be able to have that frankly, people experimenting with different ways to showcase and maybe remix some of that reputation.
When you said natural evolution, I thought you were going to go a different way with that. I thought you were going to say that like collecting is a natural human evolutionary trait, because I think that's also true too. Like I think it's just in our DNA to want to collect things. I don't know if it goes back to like our hunter-gatherer roots or what it is, but there's something in our dopamine receptors that's like, I want to collect and be able to display my collection to my potential mates. I don't know. I'm getting too deep with it now, but
the collector and the like completionist instinct is also super, super powerful.
Yeah, like POAP in the early days did such a great job of that. We used to do POAPs on every single daily show that we did at the Noun Square, and people would just flip over it until certain changes happened and it became too hard for them to collect anymore. But yeah, when it was like easy for them to collect, to just come and put the code in, whatever, people just loved it. Like people had collections that were like 200 or 300 POAPs from just coming to our show every day. You know, it was crazy.
Do you have a Jack from Icebreaker in the pipeline
Yes, like in the pipeline, in the sense of like
for the show?
I need to talk to Jack. I need to talk to Hypersub. There's like a few things that I haven't activated yet that are definitely like I need to. But yeah.
So Jack and I are pretty good friends. Met on Farcaster, and what they're doing with Icebreaker and the attestations, I think some of the stuff, like, I don't want to speak for Jack, but some of the stuff that we've talked about definitely give me like, bringing back the good parts of POAP in a way that's like really, really valuable for people. So definitely bring that up if you get a chance to chat with them. I want founders to win. It's just like one of those things where when I discovered POAP for the first time, it's like, I think I went through the same kind of loop that a lot of people did, where like you're excited about it, you wanted to do your kind of own, and then like as you do it like 1, 2, 3 times, you're like, man, this is kind of a pain, and then you like move on to other things. And that was like my personal experience. So like I want that. I want POAP to win. I want EAS to win. I don't think it's zero sum, really.
No, for sure. Yeah. Fun fact: I once designed Patricio's "I Met Patricio" official POAP for an event.
That's sick, man.
Weird claim to fame. He used to be really active in Nouns once upon a time. Okay, so I wanted to get a little bit more background on Seemore. So was Seemore something that you started before Farcaster, or was something you started because of what you were seeing in the Farcaster eco?
So I raised money, or I closed around maybe like 3-4 months after I got on Farcaster. I actually, the reason why I got excited about crypto is I'm also like a finance and payments nerd, right? And so if you've done anything with like finance and payments, and you kind of like learn about, the Ethereum virtual machine and stablecoin, like crypto, like all of the stuff that got, I think, a lot of people into crypto, all of those things are still true. They've just been bottlenecked by institutional adoption and frankly, like regulatory fuckery. I don't know, you know what I mean? And so I started what was then called VF Protocol with the idea that rather than charging like a percent of payment, payment fees, right? Like interchange fees, you run all of the float of the payments protocol through ETH validators. And so that way the payments platform like earns revenue from validating the EVM, and then nobody has to pay any fees. And so you're kind of trading, the value of money for like the time value of money. And so and then, that was 2022, end of 2022, FTX and everything else with crypto happened. I was like, man, there's no freaking way that I'm going to convince any institutional parties to use crypto anytime soon with my background. And so I was like, okay, I frankly went into the pivot hell. Many founders have been through the same. Like, okay, I know this isn't going to work. I have an obligation to investors to build something good and useful. And a good friend of mine, actually Jamie Hoffman, who of Farcaster, told me like, dude, you're obsessed with creators. Like every time we talk, you're talking about content and creator stuff. Like, why aren't you looking there? And that was like actually really thoughtful because he was 100% right. I was thinking about this thing in this space and this part of the internet all the time, and I hadn't seriously considered building something in this space.
It was more so like a hobby, like you just had a lot of content creators that you followed, or
yeah, it was like honestly, it was like I had been going through the patterns of my life, and the like finance payments thing was like my work, and then like my free time, my fun time was on like following creators and like thinking about creator kind of stuff and like participating in Farcaster and kind of like opining about what it means to participate in like a super early network. And so his push made me realize like, oh no, actually I do know, like I have some earned secrets about creator stuff that like a lot of people with the intersection of like startup, military/leadership and like that's like a weird 3-circle Venn diagram, right? And so applying that to some creator stuff led me through a bunch of different experiments of, I made some like content creation tools where like I would track creators on Farcaster's like like casts, and then anytime a cast like reached a certain engagement bar, I put that into a workflow queue for like an essay writer, like, hey, maybe write an essay about this because people are engaging with this topic for you. And so like I did a bunch of different creator tool experiments in 2023. And then in like August, September is when I realized I had a lot of like opinions about creator pages and specifically like creator funnels on the internet.
Well, it's tough actually to know where to put your content, and everybody wants to kind of own that space too. So it's tough to know where to send people.
Yeah, like the challenge with a lot of creators, well, the biggest challenge is like getting any attention at all, right? Because we've been in a content quality arms race, like throughout all of humanity's like existence, but specifically in the past like 10, 15 years, the bar to basic things that people will consume and enjoy consistently has gotten so much higher, both in production value and idea value. And so like it's hard to just start. But even once you start and you get a little bit of success and you get a little bit of momentum, it's like pretty crazy how most successful creators end up having the same handful of business models that like let them sustain creation. But every creator has to relearn that more or less from scratch, or give a non-small chunk of their income to some kind of agency that does like abstracts away a lot of the work for them. And so add in the fact that platforms take the most of the revenue. It's like a crazy space to just try and make a living in.
Yeah, and sort of the main traditional way that creators have been paid in the past, which has been through sponsorships, is, extremely problematic, and even more so problematic in the crypto space than most. And so that's something that I've struggled with since starting this media collective in 2022 as well. Is like that was just before FTX and everything, and I saw, promoting FTX to all of their followers for 6 months, and then having to basically eat shit and be like, well, that wasn't great. And this is like, that wasn't meant to be like a dig. The reality is if you're going to have to take sponsorship money in order to do educational crypto media, that's going to happen to you eventually, right? And because crypto necessarily or usually deals with people's money, it's just a lot more sensitive. And so that drove us in early days to figure out like how can we position educational media as a public good, which, I fully believe it is, especially in our case where everything we do is CC0. So it's literally, public good. Anybody can use it, reuse it, etc. And so we had a lot of success finding, grants to help us fund ourselves. And that's what I meant earlier when I said we sort of maybe had an unlock of a third bucket. But even that, it's like, it feels like whack-a-mole sometimes because different grant bodies keep moving the goalposts all the time, trying to weed out the bots and the grifters. And it's, I don't envy them. It's difficult, but as a result, good content creators have sort of been thrown out with the baby's bathwater by OP and by Gitcoin. So it's tough. And so we find ourselves here 2 years later, basically making decks to find new sponsors because we haven't been able to find consistent grant funding. So anyway, it's a tough spot is I guess what I'm trying to say.
How are you making your media kits, by the way?
What do you mean by media kit? In what sense? Like for
so a lot of the times, like yeah, for the sponsor kit of like why sponsor us.
I've basically just been doing it as a traditional sort of deck, like a pitch deck.
Okay, stay tuned for some Seemore stuff there, because we got some fun ways of making the on-chain media kits like pretty easy, I think, soon.
Nice. Yeah, put me in the alpha group.
Will do, dude. On the sponsor thing,
yeah.
So coming from the e-commerce side, specifically like the affiliate commerce where people are getting incentivized to share different products, the perverse incentive in the sponsorship game that a lot of creators don't realize is that the worse a product is, like the more like sand in the supplement as opposed to actual supplement, the more budget and margin that bad actor has
That's so true,
spend on influencers. And when you go into crypto with financial products where like it's mostly infinite margin, like at least in terms of like unit cost, it's unfortunate how much easier bad actors have versus good actors, because good actors are like spending money to make their product good, which leaves them less marketing budget to shill it to people. And so like
I was gonna say, in this case, it's like R&D budget that gets hacked into marketing.
Yeah, contract audits and all the things that you would like, what you're putting in front of people that like to watch your show, to be like, you want them to have that in the products you're putting in front of them.
No, didn't you hear, Brian? Contract audits aren't necessary.
Brian.
we won't go down that rabbit hole. Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. I feel like we could talk about that specific topic for a while, but I don't know if we would find a solution. But I think the reality is, though, I guess what we're taking away from this is that content creators have to be resourceful. And we talked about hunting gathering earlier when we're talking about POAPs. I think that's how it feels to be a content creator too, is just like figuring out, like scraping up ways to be self-sustaining from many different pots so that you're also resilient.
Yeah. So like that is actually, like all of this kind of feeds into this concept of the Seemore List, where like we're not focused on sponsorship today, but I do think since creators that want to really like own what they do and not be beholden to somebody else, they have to kind of turn into like a business development salesperson for themselves to get these sponsorships. Like those are very much the problems that, like, frankly, me and Kristen feel, because we're like trying to get sponsors for OK Banger too. But like I've seen it's so consistent across creators that are trying to get sponsors that like we're going to have some sort of like sponsor list thing that hopefully gets rid of, at least the worst 10%, because that's like where, frankly, a lot of the trouble comes from.
Yeah, and also I'm sure you and Kristen are running into this too, is that you don't want to have non-aligned sponsors. Like, do I want to do a podcast that primarily focuses on Ethereum and with a pretty big bent on the super chain, and then be sponsored by Solana or even Arbitrum? Probably not.
The vibes,
it really puts you in a weird
on.
spot. The vibe and the vibes have to be authentic, and I can't do like a 1 hour podcast, gushing about the super chain in the middle and be like, check out Solana for all of your casino needs, Nothing against Solana. It's just like, what I'm saying is it has to be aligned with you, especially if you're an opinionated content creator. It has to sort of vibe with your voice and your tone.
Yeah, dude, 1,000%.
Which narrows it down from like 1,000 potential sponsors to like 100,
Right.
It's tricky. I did want to talk about Farcaster a bit more. So yeah, let's touch on that. Let's sort of double click. I wanted to ask specifically sort of a meta question about that whole discussion about whether Farcaster has enough interesting people or not. I'd just like to hear your opinion on that. Do you think that Farcaster has a dearth of interesting content creators or interesting people? Yeah, what are your thoughts? What do you think about the future growth of Farcaster?
I think some things are universal about content creation. And one of the big ones, like the numbers aren't exactly right, but it's directionally right, where it's like 90% of the people just primarily consume, 9% do a mix of consuming and creating, and then 1% like create. And that's what they're there for. I think creating means a lot of different things. I think a lot of people that contribute to, the interesting content bubble on Farcaster don't consider themselves creators. Like that's also part of our thesis, that a lot more people like are creators that don't consider themselves that. And so I don't always agree. Like on some days, I definitely do agree with Dan when he's like, there's not enough interesting like content. Some days I think there are for the small group that is Farcaster. The problems that I see is that we're not finding like the atomic communities that can come to Farcaster and enjoy the majority of things that are already here, and also bring kind of like an expansion of that core content nucleus. Like I think it is much harder to build 3 or 4 separate vibey communities in one app at a time than it is to like, hey, we are primarily for like crypto founders. And then you expand to like crypto founders and devs. And then you expand to crypto founders and devs. And then maybe like some crypto curious devs that haven't really done a bunch of crypto stuff yet, but they don't hate crypto like Hacker News comment sections. You know what I mean? So like,
Well, the interesting thing is that people that have come from outside the crypto bubble, or at least like on the periphery of crypto, they actually love it when they get here. So you get people like Murtaza Hussein, or you get people like Naomi Afro Chicks. They pop in here from a completely different bubble, and they realize, holy shit, like I can make DJ and I can make Moxie, like, you know, Afro Chicks. Not Naomi, she just got a grant for like something like 10 grand in Moxie for doing what she's doing, which is amazing. Like, she deserves it. But that's the point, is like these creators come here and they realize, oh wow, like rewarding creators is baked into the system here. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, and like I actually consider Murtaza to be a little bit of an odd duck in the way that Farcaster has been growing, because like Murtaza has been around the internet for a minute. Like, he understands the content game. Whereas if you kind of like look at the evolution of all new platforms, they mint their own stars. Like, that's like the thing that makes the place actually become its own place with its own identity. Obviously, with every platform trying to like play the short form video game, there's a little bit of a homogenization or like reversion to that like monoculture. But new platforms feel different, and they have different winners. And basically, the old winners on previous platforms cling to the platform until they like can't anymore, and they're usually behind. Most, like, a lot of them catch up.
TikTok's a good example of that for sure. You know, people like Addison Rae and these people that were basically just children who had very, you know, they should right place, right time, and they managed to become famous from it. You know.
Yeah, and so like I think the challenge with Farcaster is figuring out like how to mint their own stars in a way that like doesn't feel forced, because you can't like make it happen. And does it in a way where we're continually like welcoming new people in the same way that, like, you know, frankly, Afro Chicks and Murtaza like came out of nowhere, right? In terms of like Farcaster vibe and energy, which is awesome. And so like I consider the Seemore target audience to be creators in what I consider the valley of death, which is like they've hit, you know, 1,000 or 10,000 subs on whatever platform that they're focused on, but they're trying to get to the point where like this thing they've committed meaningful effort into turns into actually something they can do to sustain themselves. Those creators are the same kind of creators that are like open to something new like Farcaster, because they know that their content treadmill on TikTok or whatever isn't working for them.
And it would be great if it was as easy as just porting the content from one platform to another, but like for many reasons it's not.
Yeah, 100%. Like infra wise, also just like kludge schlep wise. Again, you know, this is all like future versions of Seemore when we've earned the right to kind of expand into this. But like like one of the things I'm most excited about of our content like ingestion infrastructure, like once you set up your page and we know all your platforms, like we're pulling that content in, is like I want to be the place where any creator can, you know, one click sign up, we get all of their socials, and then all of that content gets ported to Farcaster in a way that they want, because like we can build that infrastructure if there's demand for it. There's also a really interesting problem that I don't think has been addressed or has a plan to be addressed, which is like the different universes that the different Farcaster clients of the same content, like the comparison. Like, do you have Supercast?
I do.
When you're down bad about your engagement on Warpcast, log into Supercast and compare the notifications. It's like, I think Warpcast does a generally good job of filtering out spam. I think Waj and Supercast is less focused on that because they got a lot of other things that they're trying to do. But like the same post will get like double, sometimes like triple the amount of surface metrics on Supercast, just because they're not doing nearly as much aggressive filtering of stuff. And so like
I made a joke about that one time. I was like, hey, like cut out my bot comments, but leave the likes.
Right?
give me that dopamine. Come on.
Yeah, like it's really hard as someone who's like been a daily active user of Warpcast for like 2+ years now to feel like I'm getting worse, even though like I know I'm like interacting with more real and interesting people.
I mean, in a way, it's like they're kind of just weaning us off of being so hooked to the dopamine from those vanity metrics, and maybe that's a good thing. But
yeah, like I empathize with like the problem set and what they're trying to do, especially as you bring in new people, because they're frankly almost, if not more important than the people that are already here. But like it still feels bad because I'm like a meat robot, right? Like I have this like pain.
Okay, I got my title, Cameron and Armstrong, the meat robot, the Farcaster meat robot. I think for you and I, though, it's tough because like you see your engagement cut in half or in thirds or whatever. But I wonder what it's like for new people. You know, like you hear them saying, "Oh, I'm here and I'm casting good stuff and no one's engaging." So maybe we should tell those people to go to Supercast so they get that dopamine to hook them. Because I mean, it's easy when you're already hooked and you believe in the future of Farcaster and what have you to stay. But if you never got that dopamine hook, I wonder if you stay.
Yeah, my like actually I fully empathize with that because like I've experimented with a couple new accounts because I want to see like what a new person feels like under various
Cameron's
names.
got alts.
Yeah, see if anyone can figure it out. Actually, see if anyone can figure out what my super anon casts are because I play with that. But the thing that unfortunately a lot of newer content creators don't realize is like what they consider good content honestly might not be that good. Like
That's true too.
Like it's the thing that I love most about the internet, and it's like also super toxic, problematic, whatever. But I love the fact that you don't really get to decide what's funny on the internet. The internet gets to decide. Funny, good, whatever. And like I don't think there's any other system in the world as like brutally honest as internet feedback about what you're doing. Like sometimes I think it finds the wrong pocket of the internet and there's like noise in the signal, but like most of the time people are like pretty authentically like, oh, this is a cute cat, or oh, this is dumb, kill yourself.
Right. Sometimes on the same post.
Yeah, for real. Or like the other thing that I think is fascinating is every like physical insecurity you've ever had about yourself with enough like views on a post, it's going to come out in the comment section. I've been on a Mike Israetel kick. I don't know if you've ever viewed any of his stuff, and the amount like he's like a bodybuilder, powerlifter guy, doing kind of like a sports science channel, like tons of subs. But like every other comment is making fun of his head shape because he's like a big old, gorilla head shaved. And so it's just great, man. That's so funny.
I mean, if you're putting yourself out there, you're going to get the trolls eventually. All right, couple more questions before I let you off the hook here. The future of Farcaster. You're obviously building something that's tightly integrated into the Farcaster social graph. Obviously, you believe in the future of Farcaster. Why is that?
It's a better version of the content internet. Anybody that makes stuff online, as soon as they get a non-techno jargon like filled explanation of like what's happening or what could happen, or they use something like pods or like hypersub or these like tools that just do the things that we've discovered in Web 2, just in a creator friendly and both like ownership and revenue share way. Like it's a no-brainer. Like Murtaza, we were talking about earlier, serious journalist dropping like serious news on the internet. He wants to play around with like degen and moxie tipping because he knows where he came from. That universe doesn't work for creators sustainably. And so like,
and he's human,
Yeah.
He's still a human being. Yeah.
Like I don't see anywhere on the internet that is anywhere close to the level of like honestly putting the controls in the hands of the people that like make the content that make the internet worth coming to. Every other like federated platform or whatever is like a step or two closer on the continuum of like where I think the internet needs to be in order to not be captured by massive special interests. Farcaster is the only place that I've been like, okay, this is credibly potentially the spot where it happens. So that's like why I'm bullish on Farcaster.
Makes sense. Can I ask a little bit about OK Banger? I'd love to hear about, you talked a little bit about how the show came to be, but can you tell people who haven't heard about it what it's about and where they can find out more about it?
Yeah, so we're a show. It's a show by Kristen and I at Kristen on Farcaster. It's a show for creators that don't take themselves too seriously. We like are very upfront about what we're trying to do, and it's basically to be a release valve for everybody that makes stuff and puts it into the void of the internet. it is a incredible and a miserable job to put your work out there for potentially millions of people to crap on. And I think a lot of people that do it take themselves very, very seriously and focus on the hustle aspect of it, when in fact it's like primarily a mental game, as with anything really, really hard. And so Kristen and I realized that we chatted between ourselves mostly as like a vent / practical, like, hey, how do we get better at this thing that we both know we want to do forever? And we're like, if this helps us, maybe it helps other people too. And so OK Banger is our attempt at taking our like group chats and like, support Zoom calls and put them in public for maybe other people to get some value from, at the very least, like laugh at some jokes too.
So OK Banger is like the Warpcast to Merkle Labs, basically. It's like you're dog fooding Seemore.
I mean, yeah, you see the vision. If we can't make OK Banger succeed with Seemore's tooling, I'm not building a good enough product, frankly.
And then you're just going to quit and go back to Twitter?
Nah, we'll just keep making content.
We can't stop. Love to learn a little bit more about you personally before we sign off. Can you tell us a little bit about any hobbies that you have? Do you have hobbies outside of Farcaster?
Yeah, so I'm a big music nerd. I was a band kid growing up. Picked up guitar when I was in high school. But so I did a little recap on OK Banger yesterday because we were talking about musicals, and I'm a sleeper like musical nerd. But so started playing sax, picked up guitar soon after, was a bassoonist in a bunch of different classical ensembles, and then picked up singing in high school as well. So like every day I'm singing or picking on my guitar, doing something like that. So that's like my primary not for public consumption outlet, I think.
Hear me out. OK Singer, and it's like a karaoke offshoot of OK Banger.
I got big plans, my man. We gotta focus, make the things that we're doing now work. But if we get one or two things breaking our way meaningfully in the next year, you'll see a lot more from me and Kristen.
I love it. We probably could talk all day, so gotta let you go do some work. We should chat more often for sure. Even just
for real
on Farcaster and chat and whatnot.
Yeah, man. Like hopefully my Seemore List facilitates my ability to interact with people that like I genuinely want to keep interacting with.
Yeah, I just want to try Seemore too. I realize I haven't given it as much time as I should have to check it out. Kind of obvious that I should. So,
I'm pretty sure we sneak launched the free version last night. I got to check to see if the build built. Okay. But so if you go to the site, it's like one click connect your Farcaster and then everything will be set up. So if you just go to Seemore.tv today, you can play with it.
I will do that.
All right, my man. Have a good rest of your day. I appreciate your time. See you, buddy.
Bye, man.